Okay, so thank you so much again, Saba, and also welcome again, everyone. So we started off by giving a brief background of what we discussed yesterday, and for the benefit of the recording, I'm just going to dash through them. Last week, we were looking at an introduction of civil society. Our introduction last week focused on civil society in Eritrea, in the Eritrean space, and what some of the challenges that civil society organizations that are present have encountered, what they feel is required in order to build more capacity and to create a movement. We also looked at what sort of assistance organizations need, what sort of support they need, whether it's structural support, financial support, organizational support, that sort of thing. We also looked at the degree of collaboration between the different civil society organizations, different civil society organizations that are present today. So today we are going to be looking at the role of civil society in the democratization process. So in the transition to democracy, what role does civil society play? We're going to be looking at also how to open up civil society, the space, and to empower the movements that are happening today, the grassroots organizations that are there, and also civil society organizations as well. How do we empower each other in order to play a greater role in the democratization process? So to start us off today, so how the meetings are structured, sessions are structured, sorry, for the benefit of Petrus and everybody else, is I ask a set of questions and we have a discussion amongst each other in response to the questions, but also adding on whatever else we feel is important to the discussion. So with the focus area of today being democratization and the role that civil society plays, I will ask a few questions, and I do encourage everyone to add on whatever they want to add, and also to raise whatever concerns they might have. So I'm hoping that we have a lively and engaging conversation today, like we had the last time. And I'm looking forward to all of your contributions. So just to start us off for today, I would like to find out from everyone. So we might have to go organization by organization. I would like to find out how you see your organization as a whole, and also civil society, how you see those two contributing to the democratization process in post-Isaias Eritrea, when we have now transitioned to a more democratic Eritrea. So I think just to pick on someone before we all start, I will go ahead and pick on Iyasu as usual.
Thank you. I'm the lucky person. Yes. Okay. If I'm going to talk in terms of EMDHR's role in what we think as civil society's role in democratization is, the basic business, as I have mentioned last week, of EMDHR is an empowered Eritrean citizenry. Okay, so if the citizens are empowered, then they will participate in their governing in the governing of themselves. Okay, so they will be participating. They won't be indifferent. Okay, so that is where we think our core is. Like as the MDHR, if we work on empowering the Eritreans, and then they definitely will hold to account whoever will come into power, not only now, when there isn't any space for civil society or for any kind of breathing space, even after post-Isaias. we don't know what will happen. Okay, so if we start working from just the basics of the society, that knowing their rights, knowing their voices matter. If they understand that their voice matters, and then they are the ones who will ensure there will be a responsible and accountable and government that will always feel the people. Okay, but now in our situation, the people are very disempowered. Okay, and then that's where the role of MDHR that we are trying to play is to empower the Eritrean society. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Iyasu. Helen, I don't know if you'd like to jump in there and sort of bolster the response that has been given, but more particularly looking at civil society in general and not specifically at EMDHR. What do you think that the role civil society can play in the democratization process is?
Sorry, first of all, I mean, let me just start by saying, you know, we don't know what kind of change will come in tomorrow's Eritrea. We don't know how that change process will be. This is something that's not really within our control or our hands. I guess things will unfold the way they unfold. But in whatever way change comes, there is a humanitarian crisis inside the country. The institutions are extremely weak. In fact, these institutions over the last 30 years have been eroded. So in terms of civil society needs to be, Eritrean civil society as a whole needs to be working in unison together to address a lot of issues, because in my view, I think everything we're doing now is a dress rehearsal in preparation for when that change comes, because that is when the real work will begin for civil society. So we will be left to pick up the pieces of what the regime would have left behind. So I think civil society would need to be, playing a role in providing humanitarian support, in providing support to women and children who have also been, the worst afflicted. There will be huge mental health issues. Again, civil society, will need to play a role in being able to support people. There will be infrastructures in terms of building institutions. And civil society has a huge role to play within that, because this civil society is the middle between the private and the public sector. So in a way, it has that role. And regardless of who takes power or what change comes, civil society has a role in making sure that those people that are held to account, the ones who come in, are still held to account. So it's important that, when Eritrea transitions, it transitions into being a democratic state. But in order to do that, as Iyasu said, you need to have people that are empowered. And civil society really, basis would be to ensure that people are empowered and that those that are taking over are being held accountable for the decisions that they're making. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Helen, for that. Okay, moving on, I would like to find out from, maybe we can hear from Habtab now. How do you see the Eritrean Law Society contributing to the democratization process at the moment?
Yeah, thank you. Are you hearing me? Yeah.
Yes, we're hearing you.
The very basic mission of Eritrean Law Society is to promote awareness, legal awareness of Eritrean citizens, and to help and promote the citizens to defend for their rights, and in addition to that, as legal community, the Eritrean Law Society is also struggling in documentation of human rights. As you might have known, the Eritrean Law Society, especially with its executive director, was actively engaging in this Commission of Inquiries report in Eritrean administration in 2015 and 2016. So during those times, members of Eritrean society were actively engaging in promoting human rights, and this was, I think, the tip of the iceberg of the contribution of the Eritrean Law Society. And at this time, Eritrean Law Society is also, as Dr. Saba mentioned it, we wanted also as an organization to organize seminars and lectures, and these lectures we have an intention and a plan to reach Eritrean societies not only in the diaspora but using the satellite television to reach Eritreans inside the country, so that awareness basically promotes knowledge, and an informed society can defend its rights, can stand for its rights. So it's good that we now here with other civic society organizations, we are also learning from their experience and exchanges our views. I hope the other executive councils, member of the Council of Eritrean Society will attend, as they promised. They wanted to attend in different days, so that you may get a detailed information of the role of Eritrean society, and I hope we can also share our experiences and the challenges we have, and we can, I hope, to learn also from the other friendly civic society organizations. Thank you.
Rombi, if I may add, kind of tag along with what Aftab was saying, because it's just, I just want participants in this consultation to know that that the training, during the human rights training, one of the most popular training session was the one we had with Aftab, because he was, what he was speaking about was very relevant for every Eritrean human rights defender, journalists of Erisat, and whoever attended that meeting. You have no idea. We only wanted him to do one session. They actually demanded that he come for a second time. So he actually was graciously accepted our call. Hey, listen, they want you back. So would you make it? So in a short notice, he had to come back and do a second section on due process in human rights in Eritrea. And all the questions and the topics that he was raising and the questions that were raised by the participants are very, very relevant. I think that is a step forward towards democratic and democratic change in Eritrea, because the moment you know your rights, the moment you know what is possible and what is not, what is legal or not, I think that is a step forward towards democratic society and civil society. The role of civil society, you see it there, empowering people with information of what's their right or not. So I just want to acknowledge and that bring that to this consultation session. That was very, very effective and very useful training we had with Mr. Aftab. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saba, for the kind words. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Saba. But also just to stick with you there for a few more minutes, do you see this as the role that the media is playing as well, this information sharing, knowledge sharing, as part of the process to empower the citizens, to empower citizens with the information? Is this the role that that you see the media playing in the democratization process? And are there any other ways that the media especially can assist?
Yeah, what we discussed in our association was, during these times, because of the COVID-19, we are very glad to find this Zoom meeting so that we can meet each other. And it helped us to contact with each other and to share our experiences. And we, in our discussion, an idea came. This discussion we have, it has to reach also other Eritreans within the country, even abroad in the diaspora, so that at least each person has his own experience. And in Eritrea, what the justice seekers are looking forward is an establishment of constitutional system, and we need to discuss or debate what the constitutional rights, what the fundamental rights Eritrean citizens do have, And once we try to debate and discuss on the fundamental rights Eritreans have, definitely they will understand that how far this regime has deprived their basic rights, their basic human rights. So unless we discuss about the rights we have, starting from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the covenants, including the chapter 3 of the Eritrean Constitutions, there are a lot of provisions that are addressing the fundamental human rights. And as a legal community, we have a responsibility to share the knowledge we have. And we are very ambitious. That's why, as Dr. Saba mentioned, we are now discussing and we are now planning to start a broadcast in collaboration with ERISAT, so that topic by topic, we hope that these seminars and lectures, debates and discussions will help to and above all, also this is the least discussed topic in the medias, in Eritrean medias, inside the country and outside the country. It's because the regime we have definitely doesn't want to listen about democracy, about rule of law, about human rights. And this also dictates our discussion abroad. So I hope it will attract a lot of attention and audience, even in the diaspora. So as you all mentioned it, empowering the population, empowering knowledge is power. So empowerment is also a tool, and the media is also an important instrument to promote human rights and to disseminate knowledge to the community. Also to listen from the community. Yeah, because Eritreans also have their own traditional laws for centuries, and we need also to discuss about the values, the democratic principles Eritreans owned in their or in their from their ascendants, you know. So I hope that we will get a lot of knowledge even for ourselves, you know. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank
you so much for that. I think maybe the tagline for today's session should be knowledge is power. Maybe that should be the title of the recording for today's session. Because of the emphasis on knowledge and sharing knowledge. Okay, Ephraim, I would like to hear from you. What do you think what role do you think your organization can play and can contribute to the democratization process?
I guess there is only one Ephraim left, so I assume it's me. Okay.
Ephraim, you are muted. We can't hear you. You unmuted and then you ended up being muted.
Okay, now there you go. This is one thing we need to learn before Isaias leaves, maybe. Yeah, a lot of things have been mentioned, so no need to kind of emphasize on those. But I think I would like to say in a way that I think our organization is local here, activism, and so forth. So, you know, to see how our organization here will help is maybe another way of thinking about it is that what are the things once the change happened, depending on the change, as Helen mentioned, depending on the transition type, hopefully that in the Bay Area at least heal the community here that's already divided, you know, pro, against, and other issues. And so that may be much more important in getting the community to work together, and so they can help in the country, in Eritrea, in all the things that other people were mentioning. So in order to be able to lobby and humanitarian and other contributions, I think that's probably what I would say in terms of our local contribution to that. The role, obviously our mission, our goals and objectives for the organization was more constitutional government in Eritrea, etc. Anyway, so the transitional, you know, what we'll be doing now, what our role will change based on the availability of public space, if you will, and that will definitely determine that certain things we can do. And then so in the diaspora then is lobbying and asking, you know, demanding accountability of our government also at that time, whoever is in charge, and how to also. So there are a lot of things that we can do, maybe you know, asking, you know, for them to come and explain, etc. Different things for the community, like, you know, all other, you know, democratic or other governments do. Yeah, in the last few years, I would say, you know, I mentioned last time, is just continued experience in leadership and other organizational work. A lot of the youth in our organization that are in the board members, etc. I think I believe it's very valuable to work within a community, learn how to work, you know, meetings and organizations and goals and objectives and that kind of stuff. So I think that probably will continue, but that's where our community can contribute. All the other, there are a lot of other 3 or 4 questions you have, so I think it will devolve into that if I go any further. But those are the main points I will say. You know, I'm also trying to stay focused on, at least we are a local organization as compared to all the others, I think, in this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I like the part that you brought up about healing society in relation to the divisions that currently exist in society, because that's another threat area, especially after the transition to democracy. If their attitudes and if there isn't a sort of healing process and attitudes continue to fester underneath, that could be a threat to democracy in of itself. So I'm really grateful that you brought that aspect up as well, and that you considered that aspect as important in the role to processing and contributing to democratization. Petros, I would like to hear from you. What role do you think that your organization can play and can contribute to the democratization process? You're currently muted.
You are muted, Petros.
Now, yeah. To begin with, I would like to congratulate you to bring this very important subject to Eritrea, because the lack of civil society helped the Eritrean regime, to go out, repress the people, and become a one-man show. I remember prior to the independence, 1 year before the independence of Eritrea, 1990, the independence war in 1991, but 1919, the regime said to the mass associations, in all, in different parts of the world, there was EPLF mass association, supposed to be civil society. And then they were asked, to freeze Yidaskil in Tigrinya. That's the beginning of the death or killing of civil society in Eritrea. So that's why I said this is very critical issue to Eritreans now. Since then, the people have accepted that they have to, obey orders from the top. No comment, no anything. Then what happened is that the Eritrean Women's Association have become, part of the government. They were isolated from the base, from the constituents, from the people. And they become part of the security system of the EPLF government. So it means that without civil society, it's a breeding ground in a country to develop a dictatorship. So one way is also people did not have the chance to learn about what you have started to do now. Awareness is very low. And then the Isaias had formed a personality cult. Isaias means Eritrea. And then the security are so severe, people will see that if the words can talk, they are spies. If you go and talk about Eritrea or about mistakes the government done to the people of Eritrea. So we have not been indulged in working about civil society here, to be, to be precise. We have been working to sort of exploit the situation and then expose the government for the gross human rights violations in Eritrea. I mean, you can say now, is there a human, not human rights, but is there a community independent of the government? No. And then I come here, we are talking about civil societies, Yaakil, and so on. That's very, very important because it means sort of empowering the people. The civil society must be empowered. So the politicians must be elected by the people. And if the people feel that they are not worth it, they have to be the right to deselect them. So I am of the opinion that this training is very basic and very fundamental to the issue of Eritrea we have, and had to spread to the ordinary people. This is the beginning, I hope. So as far as the Eritrean focus is concerned, we are not yet indulged in this kind of thing. But yeah, no, you open the road and we'll follow it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Michael B, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Would you like to contribute to the aspect of civil society in contributing to the democratization process?
Well, a lot of it has been said, but in a nutshell, what I would say is that I think where we have gap now, as Petros very correctly put it, that I think we are now living in an environment and in a culture of fear. that is gone deep rooted in society because of the way that people were dealt with. The moment you say anything against the regime, then you are either sent underground and nobody knows where you whereabouts, or you're either killed, or if you are lucky, then you run away from your country. And like some of us, 20 plus years, you would have no chance of to even visiting or whatever. You know, that culture of fear is now hindering the democratization process. People are, even those who are living in exile, those who are living in a democratic society where there is dispensation for such rights, that element of fear is still possessing people and blocking that act of democratization, the move toward democratization. So what I see the role of civil society in democratization process is to try and penetrate that fear factor, to try and break that anxiety that comes with it. You know, we still have our friends, our colleagues with huge amount of life experiences, with so much knowledge, and yet they can't cross that line. They still think, are you mad? Are you this? Are you that? Are you not? You don't care about your family. You don't care about you know, the people around you. They keep telling you to go back into that space of fear and to withhold your desire and your commitment to break that fear factor, and then at this work towards the democratization process. So in a nutshell, I think a lot can be said, but from where I see it, I think the role of civil society should be to break that environment of fear, so that people could understand that one can really struggle and break those stigmas that are attached with being a liberation fighter, for example. The moment you are advocating for change, there is now this stigmatization of you as an Eritrean. You know, they say, oh, these opposition groups, oh, these guys, this and that. So that is part of the machinery that Pedros described. It was created systematically, and it's deep rooted, and it takes a big machinery to uproot it. And then that machinery can only be created by civic societies. I think that is how I can summarize it. Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Zara, I would like to hear now if you might have a gendered take to the role that civil society can play, particularly because you come from an organization with a particular gender focus.
Yeah, of course. We're always here to give our gendered opinion. So I would say that our role in a post-SAS Eritrea is to ensure that there's representation across the board, not just gender representation, but also ethnic representation, religious representation, to ensure that women are in positions of power and making these crucial decisions that impact the Eritrean people, because the Eritrean people are made up of women as well. And, you know, we will continue to fight for the rights of Eritrean women and ensure that their rights are protected, and ensure that their voices aren't kind of, what's the word? Their voices aren't overshadowed or marginalized as we see in societies today. Yeah, sorry, am I muted? No.
No, you weren't muted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's kind of where we see ourselves. We see ourselves creating, you know, a strong network for women who have places to, organizations to fall back on, places to reach out to, and just continue the work that we're already doing now, but ensuring that, you know, we can make a difference in Eritrea, fighting gender discrimination. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Mulu?
Yes.
Could we hear your contribution to the role that you think Foundation Human Rights Eritrea can play in contributing to the democratization process?
Yeah, the Foundation Human Rights for Eritreans has three fundamental steps that we are discussing with different groups, parts, or movements. We say and we believe that let all Eritreans are separated from the regime, from its administration, from its skeleton, from its idea, from its thoughts, and then we can think about democracy, because democracy is not practiced in the regime system. So when we are practicing it separated from the regime, then we can do it. We are already people who raised from the society which has a written and non-written morals and rules and regulations as well, the culture, the belief, everything, the norms that supports each other. So depending on the gift, we believe on the three steps that let we separate from the regime, from our enemy. All the people let you move from the system of the regime, which is the cruel regime. It is now in Eritrea, the system has Gumbar. Then after that, let you send your representative. The representatives collectively let they make a constitution, and then let we build a national military, a national government, and a national judgment or rules and regulations or courts. And then, yeah, we can have a good situation and atmosphere in Eritrea. And we have also a pledge that a lot of Eritreans at this time are in the Westerns, in the developed countries, in different countries, that we have different experiences that we can bring to our world, to our country, to Eritrea. Then if we use that capacity, and that is a very good pledge to us as well, we can build our country democratically and economically within short time or short period of time. Then this is the way we are focusing, we are working to, and especially to happen these things, we are actively working against the regime. As you know, in the 2-3 years, we have done a lot. We have faced face to face to the regime in the court. We have also a lot of activities still doing with different peoples. Most of the people here, like Peter, Helen, Khadija, George, Michael, and others are part of that job, that activity. And we are so proud as a foundation. I'm very proud of all of them. And we are doing our best towards our society. Thank you for being listening to my voice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution. Heiko?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, Rumbi. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. First of all, I really want to congratulate you all, the organizers, for creating this amazing opportunity. My name is Heikel Nagash. I live in Boston. I am involved with quite a few groups and organizations, but today I will speak about the group that's very dear and near to my heart. And it's a community group. It's called ቋንቋታት Kids. And it's an organization. Well, it's not an organization yet, but hopefully it will one day. Right now, it's like a volunteer or community group. And basically, the vision of ቋንቋታት Kids is to empower Eritrean kids to become thriving adults. And we plan to do this by creating opportunities for kids to reach their full potential through education, entertainment, and community building. So to go back to your question, Rumbi, how do we envision to help the Eritrea with our organization is basically we want to focus on kids. I will just share the website just so it's easier to follow some of the work that we plan to do, but we want to connect different stakeholders that are interested in investing in empowering Eritrean kids. That could be different community organizations, community centers, and I would really like to take this opportunity today to let all the participants know about what we plan to do. We would love to partner with each and every one of you. I'm sure you want to also invest in kids. Yeah, and the other thing is to bridge cultural gaps between Eritrean children born in the diaspora and those in Eritrea by sharing stories, resources, and tools. Just to give you a little background about how this Qolahta Kids platform was created, this was back in 2020 when the pandemic started. I have 2 little kids, and you know how the school program, when everything became virtual, it was really hard. Kids were getting bored, so I decided to get together with some of my friends' kids and community center. I live in Boston, so the kids of the community, and I started translating one of my son's favorite book, and then narrating it to them. And through time, we decided to become like a platform. So basically, when I say bridge cultural gaps, the book that I first narrated was about this very hungry caterpillar. It's a children's book, but when we translated it to Tigrinya, there were some words that were not you don't find translation in Tigrinya, but we also thought maybe this is a good opportunity for different children from different countries to learn about each other. Maybe kids in America can teach kids in Eritrea what sausage is, for example, or things like that, things that are not in Eritrea. And the third one is that we plan to assist initiatives that work to provide sustainable education in achieving their goals. And I don't know, some of you might have heard about Let Every Kids Learn. This is an amazing initiative that's aiming to help Eritrean students. Because of the pandemic, there was a lockdown. Students were not going to school. So we were advocating for schools to start, or in the meantime, to provide virtual education. So once change comes, things will definitely change. We will have access to internet. Our people back home will have access to internet, and there are like so many things that we can do to help kids learn. So that's also another thing. So any initiatives that focuses on this, we plan to assist them. And again, we want to connect members of Eritrean communities to grow together and build community coalitions. I guess the consultation today is also aiming to do that. So anything that can bring communities together is a great thing. And having kids as a common factor to bring us together is also another idea. So that's what we also plan to do. And we also plan to innovate ways to solve existing problems of access to educational resources. Again, like I said earlier, kids don't have access now, but eventually things will change. So what can we do to help to solve that? And raise awareness about harmful child raising policies and practices that affect children's self-esteem, confidence, and success. And this to me is very, very critical, because I might have to share one video that I saw a while back, that there was this teacher. It's in one of Eritrea's high schools. I believe it's Halai, but there was this teacher who was physically assaulting the students. It was really trigger warning video. And I do believe that these teachers, they need to
be thought, basically, like the harmful practices when you are physically assaulting a student, how it can affect them eventually in their self-esteem and confidence and all that. So this is something very close to my heart. We have been advocating to end high school in Sawa for quite a long time now, but it also starts a little earlier than that, when kids at school are basically assaulted. So we need to raise awareness about these harmful policies. And finally, we want to fundraise to sponsor worthy projects. For example, it could be by collecting children's books. It could be by fundraising to sponsor like a school in one of the villages or one of the cities, a library, things like that. So these are some of the things that we plan to do. And thank you so much for listening. I would love to connect with you all and navigate on more ways to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heiko. I think that's very important work that you're doing, particularly because of the common saying that we know that you have to catch them young. I think children are more open to learning, and I think that's one way that we can assist in the democratization process, where we have this young population that is fully aware of how to hold institutions accountable, how to protect their rights, how to promote their own rights. So I think that's very important work that you are doing. But just to continue on along, a lot of people brought up the role that key institutions can play. Particularly, Mulu raised the point of having particular institutions such as the military, such as a fully functional judiciary, such as including also a fully functional executive branch. So I would like to find out from you, what role do you think civil society can play in rebuilding such key institutions, which we know are lacking, as these key institutions being a fully functional judiciary, which is impartial? How do we have an executive that can be held to account? How do we also have a legislative branch that makes the laws, but also makes the laws that are partial and that are open to everyone? And how do we help these institutions promote the rule of law in Eritrea? What role do you think civil society can play in rebuilding these key institutions in a democracy? I think anyone can take the question. Normally, if you would like to raise your hand to speak, that is fine. Or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and speak. Okay, so maybe just to pick on Mulu specifically, because Mulu is the one who also raised the point of building key institutions. Michael, you can go ahead. I see you unmuted.
We could probably break the ice, whatever they call it. I think as an icebreaker, I think what I would say these institutions or civil societies should do to enable the creation of those institutions is that I think education is key. I think education and then the creation of a liberal society with self-esteem is key. Also, I think what we have lost in the early 90s in Eritrea was that it's not because those leaders back then didn't knew about separation of power. They knew, but what we didn't have was that we had blind trust, and the culture of saying no were not developed enough. And or either they were either not developed enough, or they were lost in the midst of emotion and you know the post-liberation kind of euphoria. They were masked in those kind of situations, and therefore what I would say the role of civil societies in the creation of these institutions should do is that they must empower people. You would remember last week we said that one of the core starting or departure point that we have started as Eritrean Movement for Democracy and Human Rights was that challenging our own perceptions, our own views. When we were saying those things, it is by challenging your perceptions, your fears, the way you see things, by scrutinizing your own standpoint and make enough concession and accept the fact that there are certain things that you must say no to, and there are certain things you must say yes to. And accordingly, if you are in a civil space, that shall be what you should be teaching society. And that should be a norm as opposed to exception. Currently, the problem we have, that is not a norm in our society. So I would love that role to be played by civic societies such that we get the courage to say no. For example, when Isaias decided to take all the 3 arms of government into his office, I would like not to believe that people didn't know about it. No, a lot of genuine and intelligent Eritreans knew about it. They knew the importance of separation of power. But there were certain other elements, such as the fear factor that I was speaking to you about, the euphoria of the liberation struggle and the aftermath of independence, etc. Those things masked our judgment. And then so we made a lot of errors of judgment. So even when certain people started questioning those wrong moves, the whole public tend to attack the victim. For example, we have still people in jail who were arrested in the early to mid 1990s who saw things when none of us were able to see things, who started questioning things when none of us were able, or none of us had the guts or the courage to question things. When those people were humiliated in national television and arrested and all sort of things were happening, we were clapping our hand for the dictators. So in a way, we were creating the dictatorship. So I would like the civic organizations to really play that masking role and protect society from falling trapped into those kind of blind spots, if I may put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Michael. Would anyone else like to add on to that?
Yes. Yeah. Usually when we talk about our situation in Eritrea, the first thing that we tend to say is because of Isaias. Isaias is the root cause of all problems. But even in our MDHR, when we talk about the problem, the root cause of our situation, yes, Isaias is liable for a big part. But how about us? How about us? What were we doing when we got that far down the pit? So as society, as Eritrean society, we have also to take some blame. I always question, I mean, what's wrong with us? What's going on? I mean, Mike was talking about until maybe 2001, when people were in the euphoria time, okay? How about now, after that, after all these years, still people, we are not responding as we supposed to respond, okay? So that is where the civil society's role comes into play. Like as a society, as the Eritrean society, we are broken at all levels. The government or the regime has broken the society at all levels. Like the basic core of the society, the family. If you talk about my family, if I'm going to talk about my family, we are like in 4 different continents. Almost everybody, or all of us. One is in America, the other one is in Europe, the other one is in Africa, the other one is in, so we are like scattered all over the place. Okay, and I can give an example. Like here in South Africa, I think I remember like 10 years back, there were business people. They were trying to create like a cooperation. Okay, so they raise money and then so that at some point they will invest to make a big venture. All right, and then the embassy wasn't happy because they were like trying to be independent, and then they sent some people, and then that venture didn't last long. Okay, so that is how broken the society is. We don't trust each other. Okay, and it has been worked. So that is where the role of civil societies start. We have to think from the basic, the fundamental. Let's come back to basic. No, usually we think about, no, this will take time. No. I mean, people will try to jump and then they think they can bring about change in Eritrea. No, even if we get a change now, it won't be a sustainable change because the population is broken. And then that is where the big role as civil society can play at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Hannah.
No, you know, that as there is basically, I mean, in the Eritrean case, it's kind of like starting from ground zero. So it really is fundamental in not just having civil society, but having strong civil society as well. So, I mean, in the diaspora, you hear a lot about people saying there are too many Eritrean groups. Now, there aren't too many Eritrean groups. We need more Eritrean groups, but what we need is more people to work together, have better direction. So this is also, again, and this comes from the era of fighting for independence, where civil society was broken because everything came after the country. So everything was focused on the struggle. That's at that point where the society became militarized. So this kind of hangover mindset is that, oh, you need to only have one group. Well, no, one group is not going to solve Eritrea's problems because our problems are massive. And in starting for preparation to build civil society, our starting base also has to be reconciliation, because a lot of people psychologically, emotionally, I mean, every single family in some capacity or another has been affected, and we cannot underestimate the effects of that. And this is going to be, some of it will be resolved short term, some of it is going to require long-term planning. So I think starting on the basis of reconciliation, accepting, understanding, and, you know, as a nation crying together, as a nation saying this has happened to us and owning our space, I think that is fundamentally the first step forward. And from that, I think you can carry people along. The civil societies will be able to carry people along to build those institutions so that what has happened to us never happens again. And I think that's where our focus needs to be. We cannot repeat the mistakes that we've made. You know, we wouldn't exist as a society anymore. So we cannot afford mistakes. And I think this is where really civil society really needs to start planning and thinking from now, how do we coordinate all these things? Because the challenges in front of us are huge. And I think understanding, and that's why it's a blessing to have many organizations, because different organizations focus on different things and people have different skill sets. So it's honing in on all of our different skill sets to be able to establish those institutions, to develop them, strengthen them, and make sure we lay the foundations for a better tomorrow. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Helen. Would anyone like to add anything on before we?
May I just a quick point, Rumbi?
Sure.
I think this is this is an ongoing challenge for us as Eritrean civil society or Eritrean human rights defenders or activists. But it's not unique to us. I mean, every society goes through different stages. Where we are in terms of which stage we are, that's the only difference I see it. And I think the challenges that I see from my short time experience being involved with ERISAT as a media organization is I think difference of opinion is not tolerated among Eritreans. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, participants here, but I think that has, I think, some connection with our experience as oppressed people. I mean, throughout our life, well, most of us, I mean, Ayana, Mr. Petros, aside from him, I think most of us are kind of have a knowledge of only the Eritrean regime. In Eritrea as an independent nation, and the regime that came with it is our really a real lifetime experience to say. So we didn't have any experience other than that. And that experience, unfortunately, is horrible. I mean, you don't have any space, you know, no space of expressing yourself. So anything that's kind of a little out from the conventional thinking is considered a threat to the nation, a threat to the society, a threat to the community. So it's not tolerated. And you don't even need to go anywhere. It starts from the family. What are you talking about? You don't say that, you know? So it's, I think that culture needs to change. I mean, I think we need to develop that space, personal space for people to express ideas or opinions that are different than ours. And it's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's fine if I have a different opinion from you. It's not the end of the world. I think civil society can play a role in that, nurturing that safe space for people to express that differing of opinion. And I think, you know, Mr. Petros, again, might correct me here if I'm wrong, but I think my understanding is that during the liberation struggle, the thinking is as a communitarian thinking. You cannot think as me. You have to speak of us as the freedom fighters, as we did, even if there is any heroic action performed by an individual. Of course, an individual performs a heroic action, and of course it could be a teamwork, whatever have you, but at the end of the day there is someone who's responsible for this or that, right? You're not even allowed to say that. You have to give it to the entire battalion or brigade, whatever have you. So that, I think, cultures kind of came in after independence, and it's kind of now you cannot say anything against freedom fighters. And I think that's the culture, because now the freedom fighters, the so-called freedom fighters, are part of the government. So how dare you say anything against them, even if they are doing something absolutely illegal and dangerous and takes the country into a very dangerous route. So I think that space, creating that space for people, individual Eritrean citizens, to have that opinion expressed without any fear of repercussion, isolation, harassment, defamation, blackmailing, character assassination. That should be the role of civil society, I believe. And I think empowering each other by critical information like the one I was talking about, for example, Habtab gave to the human rights defenders as part of this the process that we're doing here. So I think it's important. There's a very critical and important role that we play as civil society organizations. Sorry, I thought that was small, but I talked too much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution, Saba. And I think it adds on to what Iyasu was also saying about how we all have to individually change our perceptions if we are to live in a civil society. I saw, Ephraim, you had raised your hand, but before you speak, I would like to pick on something that Helen mentioned, which touches also, which ties in together with something that you said earlier on about healing the society, and Helen made mention of reconciliation amongst the society. how do you see the civil society spearheading that conversation on reconciliation and healing the society? Is it something that we have to start now before the transition even happens? Is it something that we wait for the transition to happen and have something similar to a Truth and Reconciliation Commission where people come together and we share all the information, the atrocities that have happened, and share a way forward? Is that some of the way that you see the reconciliation and the healing happening?
Yeah, I raised my hand mainly to correct Dr. Saba that Petros is not the only one who knows some of the previous generations. I am somewhere in the middle, but not that the middle. I'm old enough to know Haile Selassie and a little bit of dirt, actually. Anyway, so that was my hand raising, but the question is correct. I mean, you have, what I want to say, just let me back up a little bit, a couple of things. Building an institution, you know, my experience is, you know, a lot of experience and knowledge, leadership, and function. There are a lot of skills needed and all kind of stuff. So I think part of the civil society, or at least any effort we do now, have to have some type of structure to bridge the gap, bridge the connection between the people in diaspora with expertise, law, and media, etc., and with the internal. So there's thank God now with all these internet connections, Zoom and all kinds of stuff, you can actually have multiple functions going on, whether they're lawyers or engineers, etc. So you can impact internal stuff. So that's one. But I think a lot of people have mentioned a good analysis is understanding is needed, that many people mentioned earlier that Isaias is the cause of all this stuff. And everybody, we need to look, you know, in the mirror to ourselves. And that's really true. It's almost like, unless you diagnose problem, a doctor does not diagnose the problem correctly, then you get the remedy that's kind of the wrong, you know, it will kill you. And so that's us. So in that sense, a couple of things mentioned that organizations or civil society need to mushroom more, not less. And I think it's a leftover from, you know, this mentality, like one organization like Shabia or in the EPLF, etc. That, you know, a lot of people just focus on, you know, one leadership, one this, one that. It just never works that way. And I think, you know, those are the kind of things that we try to push forward, because a lot of it's very, very, you know, easy for everybody to say, you know, if there was any one leadership everywhere, if no one's up, that just all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of learning going on, all of us. So the bottom line is to come back to a lot of the question, the institution. I think the most important thing for civil society to do is empower the Eritrean people in a very critical way, organize the people, and then being able to mobilize when it's needed, so to speak. You do organization and you need mobilization. In many countries, and that's really where, you know, Sudan, etc. You know, a lot of people say, well, look at all these educated people and organizations and stuff, but you have to have 1 million people on the street, you know, to be heard. And so without that kind of mobilization and organization, it's not going to happen. So the institutional building is more on the grassroots and getting education. Somebody mentioned education, very critical, and all kinds of stuff. So without mentioning all the others that we talked about. In terms of reconciliation and all kinds of stuff, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have, Dr. Abiy, Abiy in Ethiopia has reconciliation talk, but none of that, you know, so none of that was implemented. So this talking is there, you know. Let's look at Mandela and his team and de Klerk and all that stuff. They were able to, you know, they didn't say about revenge. They talked about reconciliation and working together in a systematic way, if you can do that. So those are critical. There are a lot of organizations that are thinking that way. They're doing that. I think Zahara mentioned about all this participation, representation, all that stuff. Very, very critical. And without that, you can't get anywhere. So the civil society aspect of it will definitely have a say, let's say. But how do you sequence that? And how do you make, all that, it needs to be thought through and so forth. And then I'll just add one concept that I think the US government uses, or at least introduced in the military, is, what they call the unity of effort. And the unity of effort is like, I'll give you one example. Like in Haiti, all this problem happened, there was no one person in charge. What was in charge was the mission. So the, US economic department will do something, the military will do something, United Nations will do something, Doctors Without Borders will do something. But all that is not coordinated by a central organization. It was coordinated by the mission. So here's our mission, everybody, let's do it that way. And this is what's called theory of effort. So I think there's a lot of concepts like that that maybe we could actually push forward in introducing many things to work a much better way. But in the locally, we are here. We're going to, the fundraising, the lobbying that is needed, that somebody mentioned, all the humanitarian, all that stuff we'll have to do. But the organization and institution building requires heavy lifting from experienced people, not only consultants that you hire, but also Eritreans and so forth, either remotely or internally. So maybe, I don't know, let me just short that. But Saba, I'm not as young as you think, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution, especially the aspect of how also we are not at a loss. This is not something that's happening for the first time. We have all these other examples to pick from, these different governmental examples to pick on. So you mentioned the US example. You also mentioned the South African example. So I think that's one way that civil society can also begin to collaborate with some of the existing organizations across the world that have already done some of these things previously. I'm not sure between Michael and Zahara who had their hand up first. Let's do it alphabetically. Michael, you can go first.
Okay, no, I was just going to provide gender preference. They say ladies and babies first. So Zahara, you're welcome to go if you want to.
Thank you, Michael. I just quickly wanted to say and pick up on a few points that Ephraim made. And I definitely agree and would say that it's about learning from, these different examples that we have now, but also learning from the societies that we live in today. So what we don't like, what we disagree with, what we want to learn from capitalism, what we want to learn from the communities that we live in every day. So, maybe perhaps we can use the dismantling of institutions to our plus to make a more fair and free Eritrea and society. So let's learn from what we don't like. We don't want to be 600 years down the line and still fighting for women's equality, women's suffrage, women's rights. We want that to be at the core and at the foundation of the work of the Eritrean, post-SAS life. So, let's learn from that, and let's use this to our advantage rather than to our detriment. Let's not put each other down. Let's work together to do that as well. Not one voice is more important than the other. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Zara. Michael?
Yes, thank you. I just want us to bring us back to that important subject that Rumbi raised. I think with the timing of the reconciliation, I want us to go back into that conversation. The reason being, I remember as MDHR, we have raised this issue quite a few times, I think from 2013, 14, and we never really have some kind of consensus on how and when aspect of it. But I can tell you that one of the biggest damage the current regime did to us is that he used one Eritrean and pitch that one Eritrean against another Eritrean, and there is that animosity that we really have to deal with before it goes into something else. And I can give you as an example, you know, there were two neighbors that I'm very much aware of, and one family was trying to organize with the human traffickers, whoever they are, to try and get their son out of Eritrea so that he is not rounded up and taken by the military. And you know, that other neighbor who had two of their children already in the army learned about this thing, and out of evil thinking, they thought, okay, my children are somewhere in a desk front, and then somebody next door is there whose son would go to the US, and then whose son would be out of evil thinking. I think they just went and spoke to some of the security guys, and before that person was smuggled out of the country, and he was rounded up, and then he was taken to the military training, and it coincided with the last war that we had with the Ethiopians. And it so happened that the very same person that was meant to be sent abroad was dead in the war. Now that family fully holds accountable their neighbors for the deaths of their children. To this day, they are just waiting for something to happen so that they can actually go and burn that family down. So this is one example. I'm sure each Eritrean family would have several similar examples. The regime deliberately used one Eritrean against another Eritrean for all the wrong. One of the reasons why it is now deep-rooted is that because there are so many people who got their hands in blood. The moment this regime something happens to this regime, they know they will be out in the cold, and then there will be a lot of people who want a piece of their life. So for that reason, I think the one aspect that we cannot afford to postpone is the reconciliation aspect. And when we started, how we started, I think those people who have fortunate enough to go through those aspects from a professional point of view, I think they need to come up with some kind of strategy. So for me, it should start today and now. In fact, we might even be late. Maybe that is what it delayed our freedom as well. So that aspect is, for me, a very critical aspect that we cannot afford to postpone. So the reconciliation must start now, and it must start in earnest, so that we must just, based on forgiveness and forgetting the past, and move on with our lives. And where possible, I think when there are heinous crimes committed, once we get an independent judiciary, then if people have to answer for their crimes, they shall do so. But I think for us as society now, one of the biggest roles civic societies could play is probably to initiate that process of reconciliation, in my opinion. Otherwise, democratization and the creation of a peaceful Eritrea, for me, it would be a distant reality without that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that and for highlighting the importance of reconciliation. Petros, would you like to add something? I see you unmute yourself at some point.
It's okay. There are mutual reconciliation and the learning of civil society values are together compatible. Therefore, when we talk about civil society, and when we have such kind of a problem now, because our people are divided, so reconciliation is a major point in this case. I would like to talk about the past. You know, there was in the EPLF, there was some kind of civil war. What civil war I mean is that power struggle. Therefore, in 1973, there were a group of people mostly came from Addis Ababa University, and there was the movers of the Ethiopian revolution really, because the Ethiopian revolution of 1974, which Haile Selassie Emperor deposed, were really a product of the agitation of the Ethiopian Student Union. It was the most radical student union in Africa, actually. Therefore, one of them, Johannes Subhatu, which is a Menka, they call them the Menka, like a bat who changes their colors during the night and during the day. And they were movers in the Ethiopian student activities for democratizing the society, because Ethiopia, as the problem today is, being dominated by Amhara elite. The others are oppressed nationalities. That's why the present situation is unitarian. The Abiy and the others, Oromos and the Tigrans, are federalist to have a government, a local government. So I go there. What it happened is that in the power struggle in 1973, Isaac was almost deposed, but he started to be dominant without sharing something. And then they almost, won. But because these were new, Isaac was in the field for 5 months, and he is the one who split from the Eritrean Liberation Front, have the opportunity to reach out to the peasants to support him. That's why the democratic elements were wiped out in 1973. They're known as Manka. Then the other people said that the first enemy, the major enemy, is the regime in Ethiopia. Therefore, they postponed all talking about democracy and so on until we come to the to liberation. What happened is that Isaiah, I will say, he can think 5 years, 6 years ahead of everybody. He knows that he has to abolish the civil society. And that's why prior, at the eve of independence in 1991, he just abolished the, it's not even a strong civil society, it's a supporter of APLF, because they used to be Eritreans for liberation in North America, Eritreans for liberation in Europe. They started to be, as a student, independent of the struggle. But somehow they manipulated in such a way. I think I have to mention here now Gaim Kubra'ab. He was on the interview last time because he was the one who was a victim from Math Association. He was a student in Sweden. Therefore, those who were advocating for independence of APLF, but still they will send money, still they will send people who would like to fight, everything they were doing, but they want to elect their own there to be independent. That's what crashed it. Therefore, what I mean to say is that at one time, it's better, it's good even to invite for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, Gaim Kubra'ab. He's a writer, and he was a victim of that in Europe. And he knows about, he has researched it about 6, 7 books. Then we could have the same understanding of why we reached to this point, because from the point of view of such people like Gaim Kubra'ab and so on. So it had a long way to go. It's not a long way, just to have an education about the past in 3 pages or in 2 pages, because we seem to have a variety of, we prediction. No, there is a specific history of APLF, why we reached there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, for that aspect of a historical look also at what has happened in the past and learning from what has happened in the past. And I think that's what everyone can appreciate, and we cannot overstate the importance of having people like you, Petros, on here, and like Ephraim as well, who indicated that he knows what has happened previously and can share what has happened before, because sometimes we forget about what has happened in hindsight and begin to focus on additional things, forgetting that there are people who can offer a different perspective because they've experienced certain things firsthand. So thank you so much for that. Ephraim, I see you have unmuted yourself, but before you go, I would like to find out from Habtab if he wanted to say something, because I saw he switched on his camera at some point. Habtab, do you want to add something?
Wait. I'm trying to unmute myself. Yeah.
You've unmuted.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute myself. Yeah. Okay. Basically, no, I'm just hearing. You know, I'm just learning the experience. But one thing that comes to my mind when you raise it about solidarity, you know, on our way, maybe we may discuss another time. You know, the experience of one day Sium Vanessa Bere. I found it is important because she mobilized like 100 eminent African writers and you know personalities. So collaboration with other civic African or African civil societies is also very important. So we may also invite Vanessa Berhe to share to us of her experience how the solidarity with other civic society can be organized, also can work. Yeah, this is maybe we can discuss for next time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, and I've taken note of that. So unfortunately, we're running out of time. Ephraim, you can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, just short thing, and I think my favorite short definition of power is something you have to have in order to do what you want. And so self-interest of any leadership will necessitate or drive for using the existing societal cleavages and, you know, whether it's religion or, you know, raja and region and ethnicity, etc. So I think we need to be mindful of that. And I think that's probably one of the driving forces. And in Eritrea, and that's actually what scares me, because there's these you know, when we talk about reconciliation, all that kind of stuff is just how do you overcome those, you know, specific things that actually divide people. And I think whoever comes after will definitely use those things to ensure their power and stay in power. And we're not immune to that, and we should be mindful of that. And I think the real question is, how do you know, continue to overcome, you know, even if you look at the Soviet Union or Russia, actually, when they're meddling in the US election, they really didn't create new divisions. They just capitalized on the black and white and other divisions. So I think it's a very common tool that's used by many organizations and people in power. So I think that's a history that I think that we need to learn from other people, and how to overcome that is our you know, I have no, you know, I feel that that's actually our Achilles heel, if you will, and the regime is doing everything it can to stay in power, from dismantling everything, but also creating that division with the people. That healing that is a very you know, that's, I think civil society need to really focus, because the rest can gel together, because there's a lot of interest in getting, you know, no war, you know, for God's sake, you know, can we just have in peace, you know, but, you know, all this other division. So I think that, you know, to me, those are the key issues. And in the Bay Area, at least we try to do those kind of things, making sure, you know, all that happens. So, but I think that's all I want to say. You know, I mean, Ato Petros mentioned the history of it. It's just critical. I mean, but we also have to analyze it from the power struggle of anybody. Is that to stay in power, how much they do. It's not really the question of whether a person is a good person, or as some people say, you know, the good emperor, you know, bad emperor kind of stuff that the Chinese people, they say they talk about. So that's not the issue. The issue is interest. And the interest only can be pushed out with an empowered, organized, mobilized people to push back. Just like the Sudanese people are just staying on the street as compared to the Egyptian people. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you so much. Okay, if I could just take up 2 more minutes of your time. I know we have run way over our time, But I think also for the purpose of discussion, it would be disingenuous to end off the session without maybe hearing if Rusom, who joined us a little later on, has anything that they would like to add. Rusom, is there anything that you would like to add just from the little bit that you caught of the conversation?
And just before Rusom talks, Rumbi, if everybody's okay with it, I think it's only fair if you can extend a few more minutes, because we kind of started late because of the technical issues. So if everybody's okay, I think you should just, and of course, if you are okay as well, I know it's too late for you guys. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saba. Rusum, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Rumbi, and hi, everyone. Sorry I came a bit late, but I think in general, I fully agree with the points raised, especially having reconciliation and the healing, the way that Rwanda has gone through festival South Africa. And I think that should be an entry point for any constructive work that civil society would do. So there's a saying that goes, Eritrean, very, very unfortunate. When you discuss even with your brothers, sisters, relatives, everyone has, point to make, and there is normally quite a struggle, to make a consensus. So I think going through how the parties, the TPLF party, used, the methodologies used to manipulate the situation. I think we could use similar methodologies to our advantage to turn that page into, constructive and positive movement. I think, as Ephraim has said it, we have been divided into regions and religions, and that has been used throughout from, I think, since he has went to the bush, I think he has used that divide and rule. I remember when some of the people who were with him, told in a book, especially Tesfai Tomno in his book, 40 years of, how do you translate it? Bad things happen. He called it, the revolution as a big bad university, a learning place for all the bad things. So I think when he was beaten politically by the Manka, he went around in the bush, spending a month thinking how to overturn. So I think that's when people say he used the card of regionalism, and he divided and used the peasants to go against the elites who were advocating for democratization. I think turning that would be, as a society, I feel that there's something we missed when you look at other countries. I think by good luck, maybe they had structures, whether under colony, they were quite organized. Though we lost it, we were leading when it comes to starting even parties in 40s, but somehow I think we lost in the process. I think getting back and thinking of maybe strategically and coming out with roadmap, maybe we should begin at some point for us to move forward, bringing the changes we need to bring as civil society. I think that entry point, bringing healing and reconciliation is quite critical. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that contribution. Would anyone else like to add anything before we conclude? Anything that they feel we might have left out that is important to raise at this particular point of the discussion?
Well, if you don't mind, I just wanted to raise, I think, one thing. Heiko was talking about supporting Eritrean kids, and I think investing in education, in teaching these children what are their human rights, I think it has to start there. And I think as civil society organizations here today, it's kind of, whilst whilst it's important to have the reconciliation, everything, we also need to invest in the younger generation from now if we want to see that change in society. So I think, and Hakel was saying she wanted to collaborate with organizations. I think if there can be literature produced teaching children what their rights are, what is and isn't acceptable. I think, using simple language, maybe in play form or whatever, but these tools need to start being built. So it's not just about dealing with the here and now, but it's also how do we build a basis? Because critically, that's what Isaias has done. He has destroyed Eritrea from its youth, from the basis to maintain its power. And if we want to change that, we need to start from the basis of Eritrean society. And those are the young people. So we need to change the narrative. We need to change the language.
Yes, thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you so much for that, Helen. I think that's definitely important, and I think also it's part of a bottom-up approach, but one that is more guaranteed to succeed because children are more receptive to learning, and if you can foster that in children when they are young, you have built, like you said, a pretty good base. Before we close off, does anyone else have any additions? Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. And I apologize for our technical issues right at the beginning, but I think we managed to overcome, and maybe let's take that as an indication of the work that we're doing, that we will overcome and we will build a democratic civil society. This is one of the signs. You have to take the signs where you find them. So thank you so much, everyone. So for next week, we will be meeting again at the same time. We're using the same link again. And next week, we're looking more at governance and capacity building. And I think already as we separate now and go to our different places and different points of the day, because we're all in different time zones, I think we can begin to think about how within governance and capacity building, within those situations, how do we promote accountability and how do we strengthen the institutions that we have talked about today, and how do we ensure that within that the governance has strong structures in place to ensure that there are checks and balances and the separation of powers, which a lot of you have referred to as we went on through this discussion. So thank you so much, everyone. I think that might be something to look forward to having that discussion again next week. And I'm looking forward to having that discussion with you all again next week. Thank you so much for all your insights. I think this has been very informative. It's been a very effective discussion as well, because I think we managed to build up from the bottom, and we managed to discuss how we can develop the institutions ourselves as civil society, and how we can strengthen them, and how we can hold not only our government accountable, but each other as civil society as well. And how do we reconcile our societies before we can even begin to talk about democratization? So thank you so much, everyone. This has been a very interesting and informative session. And I look forward to seeing all of you again next week, same time.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ruby, for all your work in the facilitation. It's really much appreciated. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
And it is in the recording now.
Ciao, ciao.